Hello, I'm Dawn, back again for another installment into the adventures of writing a historic fiction novel for the very first time in my life, and all the joys and pitfalls of historical research. It can give you gifts, as we were talking about last time, and it can present you with detours, let's say. Well, last time when we were talking, I gave an example of a real life person I intended to use. I'm going to shift you just a little bit. A real life person I intended to use as a character in the story, as a foil for my main character. I'm sorry about that. Oh, and I'm sorry about the background neighborhood block party or whatever's going on over there. It's just ambiance. Okay, so there was a character, a person I wanted to use as a character. That is, I'm hearing raccoons in the trees. It's a little distracting. I wanted to use as a foil for my main character. And I found out that he was a boarder of another person I was using as a character, a real life person I was using as a character in my story. And how it just gives you chills how history, the true life record, can give you gifts like that sometimes. And then sometimes it just takes it right away from you. So that's the example we have today. I had, in my overall historical research, found out that there was a hurricane that hit the city in the end of July 1870. And I thought that would be so great to use for dramatic, climactic scene. And in the details about the hurricane hitting the city, it wasn't a catastrophic, devastating hurricane, but it did do some damage, mainly with ships becoming unmoored and banging into each other and sinking. And there was one building that was called the Girard House that lost its roof. And I found it very interesting that this was a house, the name, that had a name. So what was this place? Well, as I went into researching, I didn't find a direct connection to the Girard House. I found an organization called the Franklin Literary Society. It was a precursor to the public library we have today. And its members, they had a paid membership. They utilized what they called a reading room and shared information, did research, collected historical artifacts from the city. And it was actually a precursor to both the public library and our city museum. The founder of this literary society was a man by the name of Augustus Girard. And piecing together more details, for example, in a description of the place where the Franklin Society reading room was located, almost identical to the Girard House. So it's very easy to put it together that the Girard House was the place for the reading room of the Franklin Literary Society. All of this plays into my story. I know this is like, where is she going with this? It's a little bit of a pivotal moment for my main character when she changes course a little bit. Not a major change, but she's starting to make some strides when she discovers the Franklin Literary Society and makes a excursion to the reading room and meets Augustus Girard. Augustus Girard, I picture at this time, he only lives about 3 more years after the time frame of my story. So there's really not much information about him online. He wrote a book. I couldn't tell you the title of it because it was one of those excruciatingly long titles that they were very fond of in the 19th century. And it was something scientific. But I envision him being very much like an eccentric professor that I had in college, and I loved him to death, and his picture resembles that professor to me. So I was like, I have to make him a character in the story. He's going to be very eccentric, and he's going to be one of those people that I know several organizations where people were very in the middle of things, in the heartbeat of things, serving as president and hosting functions and all of this in their prime. And then as they get older and are less able to be as full force active in an organization, they still have a heart for it, a love for it, and they will still participate, and they will still volunteer. They will still show up and usher for plays if they were in a theater group, for example. So that's how I picture Augustus Girard, and that's how I intend to portray him in the story. All right, cut to the chase. The problem I found today, actually yesterday, I found in a primary source newspaper article. At the point in my story, the reading group, the Franklin Society, had purchased a new building, and it was a former church, because their membership was growing. They were thriving, which is very wonderful to see, because in Reconstruction, Mobile, Alabama, not everything was thriving, honey, let me tell you. But they were. And so the article is basically about them being in a kind of limbo. And then there was a letter to the editor returning back saying, well, we're still active. We're just in between because of needing renovations to be done at the new building. I'm trying to weed out the extraneous stuff like the need for lectures and blah, blah, blah. The point is, they weren't meeting at the Girard house. It was never mentioned. And it was sort of just me adding two and two together to put them at the Girard house in the first place. I never got anything that was definitively putting them there. But anyway, at this time frame, they were meeting in the Mobile Bar Association's library rooms. They were borrowing space in order to meet. And y'all, I wrote the chapter where my character visits the reading room of the Franklin Library Society. I think it was chapter 13, and I'm now working on chapter 16. So, yippee. Now I get to change all that, right? But I have a plan. Ooh, that startled me. I hope you heard that dog. It really startled me. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll carry on, shall we? He's really distracting. Where was I? Okay, so now I am thinking that she will go to the Girard house because her information is old. She's going to go there and find out they moved. And the thing is, y'all, the character that's the real life person who I wanted to use as a foil for her is a lawyer. Now I don't know what's going to happen when she has to go to the Mobile Bar Association to meet people or meet Augustus Girard. Actually, I don't know what to do with that at all, because would he be there? It's not their space anymore. Oh, wow. Yeah, sometimes it gives you gifts. Sometimes it throws you curveballs. Anyway, I was going to say that her going to the Bar Association kind of amps up the tension about the potential of running into this other real life character. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to stay true to the history. I just don't know, this keeps happening, and I'm just thinking, why is the cosmos playing with me this way? Because, for example, there were And my mom's like, what are you doing? There were, so funny. Oh my goodness. I'm tickled now. But there were black newspapers in Mobile. The very famous one is the Nationalist, and there are some copies, very limited number of copies available to view at the Library of Congress archives if you go online. And there are copies down at our local history section of the library, and I've gone and I've looked at them. It seems like it went out of business before the start of my story. Okay, this very well-known Freedman's newspaper. Was going to rely on it for part of my story, and it's like a puff of smoke. It's just gone. Okay, well, there were others, right? So I go looking, and there was another newspaper that started called the Mobile Republican, and of course it catered to freedmen also, and Republicans, which were in the extreme minority among the whites in Mobile at the time. But it didn't come into operation until, let's see, like 4 months after my story. So the time frame where I have set my story is going to take place over a course of a few months. It goes from like April through the end of July, maybe the 1st of August. That's just the short time frame of my novel, and it seems like it is right in the center of a black hole in Mobile history. Anyway, I just thought, I would have a pleasant conversation with myself in my car headed home from work today, talking about all the hills, the peaks, the pitfalls that all of this is. But that's the adventure, right? And every curveball, every detour is an opportunity. You just have to find it and use a little imagination. So I have my original chapter that I kind of alluded to before. You don't really know what happens in there, but you know enough. And now we don't know what's going to happen with chapter 13. I can't believe this. Ay caramba. Oh well. Until next time, folks, I have no tagline. See you later.